And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird from Awesemo.com. Dan Strafford, Dave Lockren along with you on this Friday morning, getting ready for an 8-game NBA slate. Talking with Dave before we start recording the sweet spot here between 7 and 9 games all week long. Dave, how you doing on this Friday morning?
Oh, doing good, man. Just saw Raheem Mostert snap his arm in half, though, so that wasn't exactly fun. Nick Mullins. Oh, who would have thought? Who would have thought? I mean, seriously, the Oakland Raiders are the only team that would hire John Gruden. It's really a disaster.
Oh, but no, Dave, there are players are calling and texting.
Everyone's dying to play.
Yeah.
Oh, I saw it. But I mean, what's crazy though is like you look at this and there you go. Raiders just banked a field goal, hit a field goal right off the upright. No surprise because it's the guy that was cut from. Was it Daniel Carlson or something that was cut from Minnesota?
Yes.
After he missed 3 straight field goals. Yeah, so big surprise. No, I mean, look, it makes no sense to me. But now you got rid of Amari for a first. You got rid of Khalil Mack for a grip of picks. It's like now you just have to keep him around to see what he does in the draft because he's going to convince you that he's building something, and that's not good. But, hey, to turn the page to NBA, my man De'Aaron Fox, it is so fun to watch him evolve as a basketball player. 30 point, 10 rebound, 15 assists, triple-double. That was a just stupendous game. Joel Embiid went up against good old Boban Marjanovic, and it was actually a really fun battle to watch. It was actually a fun battle to watch. And Embiid clearly got the best of him, finished with a monster game, Dan. We're talking a season high, 41 points. I think he had like 12 rebounds, 4 blocks, monster outing from Joel Embiid. He continues to put up huge numbers. I think that was his 6th 30-10 game of the year, and that was actually a 41-13 game. He just continues to dominate. We got a decent Lou Williams games off the bench. But I tell you what, and of course Giannis finds a way to still put up a decent line. It was looking ugly, but he finishes with 33-11, 2 assists, 3 steals against a tough Boston defense. Just one thing to point out, though, there are some bad teams in this league, right?
Yes, sir.
The Cavs are bad. You know, they're not good at all. I mean, when Kevin Love comes back, it'll help a bit, but they're still going to be bad. The Washington Wizards, man, they should get better, but they're 1-6. The Knicks, the Bulls, the Suns, the Mavs, there's some bad teams out there, but I'm not sure anything is as bad as this Atlanta team. I mean, when they lose, they get absolutely demolished. And, oh, man, you are 2.5 point favorites at home against a Kings team, a West Coast team that's playing their second game of a back-to-back, right? And they drop 146 points on you in regulation. They win by 31. It just colossal disaster. They've been the all-value team of the year for DraftKings. That'll soon change. But you get 27, 5, 6, 2, and 1 from Buddy Hield. Not a great one from Willie Cauley-Stein, but I mean this whole team just continues to impress. And the Atlanta Hawks, man, when they're not hitting 3-pointers, they shot 8 for 31 tonight. They're dead in the water. What a bad basketball team that is.
Yeah, it's is a mess. I mean, it's a lot of teams that are living by the 3, dying by the 3, but the Hawks have very little else to go on if the shot's not falling. So they will continue to be the team, especially with 3-pointers. You're going to have tons of rebounds against. You're going to have breakout points or fast break points, I should say. With a hockey term.
Hockey reference, yeah. Fast break, though, you got it right on the second turn.
Oh, yeah, every once in a while. Blind squirrel and all. You get that team to target all season long in the Atlanta Hawks. Pace, what are they first or second on the year? I'm pretty sure the Hawks are.
Last I looked, the Hawks were first.
Yeah, they're first. Up by almost a full 1.5 points.
You have to be when you're that bad. You just run.
We talked about the Nets forever when we talked about 2 or 3 years ago.
The Sixers. Remember the Sixers with Tony Roten or MCW.
That's right.
With Jeremy Grant and I could rattle off a bunch of names that might still be in the league, but they're like back of the bench players. Yeah, dude, that team was playing at the fastest pace in the league by a wide margin. Great for fantasy, just absolutely despicable as an actual basketball team. But yeah, and the offensive rebound shot clock is definitely speeding things up as well.
Man, this is a who's who. The 2013 76ers.
Yeah,
This is an impressive
was
run.
Noel there?
No, he was the fall. I think he was the draft pick that spring, wasn't he?
It could have been. I get them all mixed up.
Yeah, I struggle with especially the years when the draft happens and the.
I guess he was 14. Okay.
Yeah, I think he was the draft of 14. You have Spencer Hawes, Dwayne Dedman.
Oh, they still had Hawes that year?
Yeah, Tony Roten, Thaddeus Young, and obviously this is the roster for the entire year. So players
still there.
Yep.
Holiday was gone.
Yes.
Yeah, that wasn't even their bad team, dude.
This was 13 and 63, 19 and 63. Oh, that's right. The following year was.
Go to 2014.
That's right. I forgot about that.
I think they won like 10 or 11 games.
Yep. Yep, that's right. I remember they were the whole season struggling to get to double digits. Oh, that's awesome. Good for the 76ers to have the roster they have now.
They put up a big game today. They looked real nice.
Yeah.
Except Saric. I think there's something wrong with Saric beyond just, bad luck, a bad run. I think something's going on. It must be something mental.
Did Jimmy Butler sleep with his girlfriend?
I don't know. Whatever it is, he's missing just wide open layups, careless plays, turnovers. One he didn't get credited for, but he should have. Throwing the ball out of bounds. Like, there's something up with Saric, man. It's looking rough, real rough.
The 8 games on tap here. You got James Harden as probably the biggest question mark coming
Doubtful, though.
Yep, had a hamstring, went through full practice has a hamstring, has 2 of them, in fact, but one that's hurting. Went through full practice on Thursday. Still seems that he will miss on Friday. So that is a big one to watch. You also have Devin Booker with a hamstring that seems more likely to play. Any other injuries or potential sits that you're keeping an eye on?
I mean, those are obviously the 2 big ones that we're paying the closest attention to for sure. Aside from that, there's nothing that stands out as a big play. I mean, one thing that we should note is that Dwight Howard will return to the lineup.
Yes, sir.
He will start as he should. I mean, you don't need Jan Mahimi in there at the 5. Donovan Mitchell's out. I think – let me try and think here. I think that's probably it. I mean, the Isaiah Cannon news is also pretty big because that, will definitely play a role in what we do. Jeff Teague and Tyus Jones are both questionable as well. But you look at Eli Okubo, and last game, yeah, you didn't get much great out of him. But if you just – this is kind of important, and I guess we can kick it off with some point guard discussion. Okubo was in there. If you look at his rotation, the biggest concern is that he plays 7 minutes in the first, starts the second, plays 7 minutes. So he plays 14 minutes in the first half, and then he comes in, and then he comes in. I'm trying to look at his at these personal fouls to make sure that wasn't an issue. I don't believe it was. He comes back in the third and only played 4 minutes. But then he plays, 10 and a half? He plays 11 minutes to finish the game in a blowout. So now you have to wonder what's going to happen with his minutes. I mean, if Booker and Cannon are both out, he's up to 4,300 now, and he's facing Toronto. Like, this was against the Spurs team that doesn't have a great defense, but obviously Pop in good matchups is going to put them in a position to win. Even though this was their first actual comfortable win this season, you have Eli Okubo against the Toronto Raptors, and that's just really an easy pass. The Raptors are too good of a team, man.
Is it the 2 fouls in 2 minutes? Maybe like a coach is like, hey, ride the pine because
I saw, but those were his first 2 fouls.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we've talked many times before about how coaches don't seemingly understand the math of sitting players because of foul trouble.
But he had. I mean, he shot 2 of 3 in that stint, right? 3 minutes 49 seconds. I mean, sure they were -4, but the whole team's trash. He had 2 personal fouls. Sure, I don't know if they were shooting fouls, but he had a turnover, and then he had a steal. So I mean, yeah, it's a bit of a colorful line there, but it's not like he missed all 3 shots, didn't grab a steal. I don't know. Who the heck knows, man? I think you're looking at. Oh, and by the way, the other foul was an offensive foul. So the other turnover was an offensive foul. So I don't know what to make of it. It's kind of weird. But then he comes in and cleans up during mop-up duty. Although the whole game, I mean, let's see here. In terms of score, the Spurs had a 32-point lead in the second quarter, right? And then I don't think it ever came down below 20. So maybe it was just like, all right, well, we'll get this guy some minutes or this guy some minutes. It really doesn't matter. Troy Daniels played the entire fourth quarter. Jamal Crawford, or no, Mikal Bridges played 18 minutes to finish out the game. And it's when you have games that are that much of a disaster, it's really hard to gauge much from it. But, one more thing to point out with DeAndre Ayton is, I said this on the Deeper Dive the other day. We didn't get the game we were looking for from him. It was a bad one, actually. But they got absolutely smoked, and he still played 5 minutes in the fourth quarter. Like or 4 minutes in the fourth quarter. He still played 31 minutes. So Kokosko's clearly trying to get him minutes in no matter the situation, which bodes really well for him, especially if he's going to be playing like potentially 7 blowout minutes in the fourth quarter against the opposing team's bench unit in blowouts. So that's just something to keep in mind. That even though he had a bad game, you have to like that, knowing that this kid's on a bad team, but he's going to get run in the fourth with the bench unit and should get a lot of opportunity.
All right, where else are we going matchup-wise here at point guard? What are some of your favorite places to maybe exploit a matchup or find the right price point?
All right, yeah, well, what's interesting is you have Donovan Mitchell out, and it's not like Rubio's a guy that's going to come out there and scoop up big minutes, or I'm sorry, big usage in his place. Rubio's not just going to start shooting a lot because Mitchell's out. It's not going to be that's not going to happen. What's also interesting though is Alec Burks, who, assuming the guy was healthy, I'm not saying he would have come in and played 30 minutes. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but he probably would have played around 25. He's out too. So when you look at this team, it's hard to gather what we're going to get here with Mitchell off the court. I mean, my guess is that you'll see a decent amount of, Dante Exum potentially at the 2. You could see probably some Royce O'Neal as well. None of these guys are dudes that you're really excited to get in your lineup, especially not against a Memphis team that has played solid defensive basketball. So, yeah, Mitchell's out, but we can talk about the rest of that game later. Just not really sure that there's a guy you want to load into your lineup. If anyone, it would be Rubio. He's 5,700. It's a home game. It's going to be a slow-paced game, but it should stay competitive. Utah's still a decent team. They're good enough defensively, and Memphis is not that good. So Rubio is just so cheap that he's going to be on the board. And then again, like if you're looking for a punt, Dante Exum is cheap. He has point guard eligibility. He probably plays 25, 28 minutes, but you're not excited to get him into lineups either. So let's talk about real players for a moment here. Sure. Russell Westbrook against Washington. Back-to-backs you don't really care about when it comes to him. I mean, it's Russell Westbrook. The Washington Wizards have just been so bad, man. They've been so bad. They're 1-6 in the East. It's almost hard to fathom a team with that much talent. And by that much talent, I mean, you have Wall, you have Beal, you have Porter, you even have Oubre off the bench. Like Markieff Morris isn't a bad player. That roster should not be 1-6. Maybe they grab this win from Oklahoma City, but man, they're a bottom 5 defensive team right now. Their offense has just sputtered terribly. I mean, their offense is down there with some really bad teams. Interestingly enough, it's one rank higher than the Houston Rockets and 2 higher than Oklahoma City. But I still think that this is one of those games where you just get an outstanding performance from Russell Westbrook. Great matchup. The Washington Wizards have been crushed by point guards this season, for whatever you make of it. In terms of efficiency allowed to the position, the Washington Wizards are, I think, bottom 10. It's not been pretty, and Westbrook is just really good. I also expect this game to stay competitive. Right now, Washington's a 3-point favorite, but you have a 231 total here, and then Westbrook still priced below 11K on DraftKings. I have a hard time getting past that when you're that price. Like, you're getting such a good floor on him every single day. Another thing to point out, John Wall is down to 8,100.
Yep.
Now you're getting John Wall at a spot where you can definitely, I will oblige. I know you're going up against a decent defense, but here's the thing. Who's going to guard John Wall is the question, because you have Brad Beal. If they're going to put Paul George on one of those guys, they're likely going to throw him on Beal. Andre Roberson is their best wing defender by far and makes them way better defensively. He's out for another month or so. I mean, he's not even going to be reevaluated until December something. So, I mean, what are we going to see in terms of John Wall? Is it going to be Terrence Ferguson guarding him? Like, I mean, I think, oh man, John Wall at this price point, you could see like a Wall Westbrook battle here, and it's not even like you have to pay a premium for Wall. I think trying to find ways in tournaments to get both of them into the lineup is pretty nice. Then you also have Curry, though. I mean, we loved Curry last time because he was under 10K, and he did not disappoint. He's been outstanding this year. I still think he's a viable option against Minnesota, a bad Minnesota defense. There's a lot at the top of the point guard position. You also have Chris Paul against Brooklyn, and I don't know how popular he's going to be, but this position is so stacked that, like, can he have a big game with Harden out against this Brooklyn team? They desperately need a win. Houston does. Yeah, I absolutely think he can. Houston's only a 3-point favorite. But at the same time, if you're like that, I'd rather pay down for John Wall. I wouldn't blame you.
Right.
You want to play Kyle Lowry against Phoenix, I wouldn't blame you, even though I think that game gets out of hand really quick. I mean, there's just so much at the top of the point guard position that you're going to have trouble not playing Chris Paul, but you're going to have trouble being like, yeah, I'm going to be way over the field on him, because I assume people will still play him with James Harden now against Brooklyn.
Mid-tier, low-tier, any cheaper options here that you think have upside outside of talking about Okubo earlier in the show?
Yeah, I don't think – no, I said I wouldn't play it.
No, I just as a, like, in this tier, names that you either go for or stay away from.
Oh, okay. By the way, Brooklyn Nets, where do they rank defensively this year? 21st. So they haven't been good.
And pace-wise, they are low
slow,
down.
I think.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
They're 28th overall.
Yeah, playing at a sub-100 pace. That's pretty interesting. Mid-range, we have our boy Luka Doncic, of course, priced or point guard only, facing the New York Knicks. I mean, that's just a really good spot. 7,400 is pretty reasonable. I already mentioned Rubio. We'll put him in the mid-tier, but he's kind of value on that. He's right at that threshold. I can't pay this much for Oladipo. I'd rather just pay down for John Wall. That seems to be the appropriate play there, or pay up for somebody else. God.
How about two names down
Dennis
here?
Smith, by the way.
Well, that's it. I was going Dennis Smith Jr. and what your take was here on one, Derrick Rose at 5,400. You have Jimmy Butler back. Butler sat himself out last game, but obviously put up gigantic numbers. Assume people will play him because of that. Won't have the same usage with Butler back in the lineup. I haven't seen other news. Is Teague out again for?
He's questionable.
He's questionable. So at 5,400, reasonable upside here in a faster paced game against Golden State. So Rose and Dennis Smith Jr. were the two names down here below 6K that popped out at me.
If Teague and Tyus Jones are both out, yeah. If just one of them's out, no. I mean, obviously, if just Jones is out, it doesn't mean shit. But if just Teague is out, no, like, people are still going to play him because of that last game. He shot 19 for 31.
Yep.
Okay, played 41 minutes. it's not like he's expensive. I'm not saying Derrick Rose is expensive, but if one of these guys plays, the minutes are getting cut. He probably still plays around like 28, 29 against Golden State, but there's also this game could be over. I'd rather not. I would just rather not. And if you're someone that didn't play him, I definitely wouldn't be chasing Derrick Rose points either. I don't think that'll end well for you at all. In terms of value, like Ntilikina, man, Adam's a little higher on this guy this season than I am. I know they're trying to get him more involved offensively, but I'm having a real tough time buying into it that he can sustain any type of offensive production. I know he's had a couple decent games there. We'll see. He's still cheap. He's still playing 30-plus minutes, so it's not like you hate it against Dallas. You
Right.
Really don't hate it. And you could see how Ntilikina could pay off, no doubt. Like we could sit here and I could make a very good argument for him and a very good one against him. But the one against him is also pretty valid as well. He almost feels like he'd be more cash viable because even if he has that decent game, it's very tough to see Ntilikina getting up there in fantasy points above that 30-plus range. But Dennis Smith, obviously is a solid play. If Jeff Teague does play, by the way, he's down to 5,200. I know he disappointed some people the other day with 23 fantasy points, but we still have to take note of that. He shot 2 of 12, 0 for 4 from 3. That's not going to happen every day. I mean, Teague is still going to have some good games shooting for sure. And, if you're playing 32 minutes a game and you're leading your team in a lot of categories, like facilitating categories and touches and opportunities as a passer and running the offense, like I'm not going to ignore you either because that's still really cheap. So, yeah, Jeff Teague is perfectly fine. And then, really whatever you want to do with Rubio and Exum. It's not an easy matchup, but it wasn't an easy matchup for Rose and the Timberwolves, and we saw what they did. So 2018 basketball can bring a lot of surprises.
Yep. Much like the NFL, defense does not matter. Let's talk here at shooting guard. Obviously, with MPE on DraftKings, where we're focusing this early look, you have a ton of players we've already talked about. Ones we'll talk about over at small forward. Shooting guard specific, you get Butler, obviously small forward as well. Curry, Leonard, Harden. Who's one of the first actual shooting guards here for you that pops off the page? I guess Leonard and Butler we could talk about it at the 3. Oladipo you talked about, Curry you talked about, Harden you talked about. You have Levine, Donovan Mitchell. Tim Hardaway Jr. is sporting, I think, the 6th overall usage on the year to start. He's up to 7,100 with a matchup here with Dallas. And then you get Brad Beal.
Who's that?
Tim Hardaway Jr.
Yeah.
At 30.1, I believe.
Bill got bailed out on that chalk night with the 5 stocks.
Yes.
2 blocks, 2 steals, but sometimes that just works out.
Right.
He had 17 points, 5 for 16 shooting. So he had a really bad shooting night. He played 40 minutes. He had 3 blocks, 2 steals, 7 assists after having 0 assists in back-to-back games. Against OKC, I just like John Wall. I think this spot lines up a lot better for Wall. I'm assuming that you're going to see Paul George on Beal for stretches, and that just makes it a more appealing spot. Excuse me, a more appealing spot for John Wall. Plus, he's not even that much more expensive than him, so it's kind of difficult to ignore that. Wes Matthews coming off a game where he fouled LeBron for 0 reason, no reason at all, literally no reason, and they had a 1-point lead. LeBron, I think he made both shots, or it was tied, and whatever it was Wesley Matthews' fault, and they ended up losing. It's amazing, though, that the Lakers are grinding out 1-point wins over the Mavericks. I mean, it is really something else.
Bad team. They might find their way, but the way they constructed it, I think we all saw in the offseason, like the pieces they put together out there just didn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah, I don't know if it was like whatever LeBron wants, bring him in, but I really don't know. I mean, they've been disappointing. They've had a lot of really close losses too, but they should be better, at least with their the teams that they faced. It's not like the teams they faced have been particularly solid either. But you know what? Wesley Matthews, I'm not big on playing Wesley Matthews, but there's a couple things that really stand out. I'm going to tell you, Dan. He's played 8 games. He's played 32 or more minutes in every one of those games, okay? So you know you have the minutes. In terms of field goal attempts, he's taken 15 or more field goal attempts in 6 of 8, double-digit shots in all 8. He's getting up a ton of three-pointers. Like, Wesley Matthews clearly hasn't been the story in Dallas because of Doncic, as he should be. But Matthews is having some pretty solid games. Like, I have not been disappointed by him. If he gives you 30 fantasy points, which he's done, or he's giving you 28, 34, 32, 35, 29. He's had a couple ugly ones mixed in there, but that's what he does. I think Wes Matthews against this Knicks squad is actually a really solid value play on a night where you might not get much at the position. Like, if you were to ask me, would you rather play Wes Matthews or would you rather play, I don't know, Damian Dotson? I think both are viable in the same game. But I prefer Matthews here. I think Dotson, has come back down to earth a little bit. This isn't to say he can't have some solid games, but I prefer Matthews at a similar cost. Don't have an issue with either of them if you're looking for value. Dante Exum's eligible here. That just feels like one of those spots where he really just lets you down. It feels like a spot where Dante Exum disappoints. He is averaging just shy of a fantasy point per minute this season, but I'm not convinced, Dan. I'm really not. I'm not convinced that Dante Exum against Memphis is going to put up numbers. He's not someone that you can rely on to shoot a whole lot. But you know what? Maybe with Mitchell out, given the fact that Donovan Mitchell is someone that's going to jack up 20 shots a game, those shots are going to go somewhere. And it's not like Joe Ingles is going to be handling the ball and penetrating, driving to the lane, or it's not going to happen. So, Rudy Gobert's not creating his own shots. Ricky Rubio isn't going to shoot much. I don't know about Derek Favors. Mitchell was that one guy. So that would be my one argument in favor of Exum. Like, he might go out there and they might say, dude, take some shot, get some shots up, because who else is going to do it consistently? They don't even have Alex Burks to get some shots up off the bench. So, Exum has a 24% usage rate this season. Usually someone moves into the starting lineup and the usage rate comes down significantly. But I'm not really sure how much it's going to come down on an offense where you have guys that simply don't shoot that much. Just real quickly, give you some usage rates for the rest of the starting lineup. Rubio is at 18%. Derek Favors this season is at, Derek Favors sits at 21%, so that's not very high, and he doesn't even play a ton of minutes. Rudy Gobert is at 17%, and Joe Ingles, here we go, to finish it out, Joe Ingles is at 19%. You have one guy in that starting lineup over 20%. So maybe Exum does make some sense based solely on the fact that he's going to get shots up.
In the Pelicans Trailblazers game, Julius Randle in 6 minutes, 4 for 5 on field goals, 6 for 6 for free throws, 14 points already. Wow. Impressive start, or coming off the bench, not start, but start to his time in the game. Any of these Houston Rockets backup shooting guards, Eric Gordon, Gerald Green, James Ennis, worthwhile at least for a second look as you're doing roster construction on Friday?
Yeah, you mentioned Hardaway. I think there's a fine spot for Hardaway. You're going to jack up 20-plus shots, and you're going to face a bad Dallas defense. I'm on board. You're not going to hear me complaining about that. I think it's a good spot. I don't usually like going value here. I mentioned those guys, though. I do think there's decent value. Jimmy Butler's still underpriced at 8K. He's still underpriced. Do we know what we're going to get from him? Like, is he going to come out there? Is he going to try? Now I don't really even know. There was so much controversy or confusion over why he sat out. First, it was because he was planning to do this to force a trade, and then it was that he was sore because he hadn't, been involved all preseason and in training camp. Like, no one knows. If I felt confident about Jimmy Butler at 8K, I'd be all about it. Granted, you have a Golden State team that's favored by 11 points, but they toy with teams, man, especially at the Oracle. They let them hang around in the first half, kind of make a game of it. And then they blow it out in the second half, usually late third quarter. But this game's got a total that's almost hitting 240 right now. So, yeah, I'd be remiss to not mention somebody like Jimmy Butler at almost below 8K. That's kind of crazy when you think about his upside.
All right, let's move on to small forward. where a ton of these names from shooting guard are eligible, but we'll look more at the small forward, power forward grouping of Leonard, Durant, Paul George. You just talked about Jimmy Butler a bit. You have Tobias Harris at 7,300 for the Clippers. Aaron Gordon at 7,200 against those same Clippers. Hardaway, we talked about. Ingles, we talked about. Karis LeVert at 66, and we move on down the chain. Beyond that, what do you make of Kawhi here at 10-1 as a matchup?
Way too expensive.
Not playing back-to-back, so be in the lineup here, but a high price point. You have Durant. I don't know if you want to save him for power forward. And then you have Paul George, Butler, and we go on from there. Any of these more expensive small forwards from a roster construction standpoint make sense, or do you see this at least as one or two guys they can find in the mid or lower tier to fill this position?
I mean, I think sub 10K Kevin Durant's pretty interesting. Curry's been the story all season, and Klay Thompson got his game the other day. You're probably – and Durant's had a few really solid games. You just haven't heard a whole lot about him. Draymond Green's finally coming off of a solid game, fortunately, because I was pretty high on him the other day at sub 7K. It's hard not to be. Finished with 49 fantasy points. I like him again at 6,900 on DraftKings. We'll get there. I think Durant, fine in tournaments. Generally, you can play Durant in cash. It's hard to know when you're going to get the 44 fantasy point game from just because of the loaded team. But I can't pay that much for Kawhi. I mean, Kawhi is a phenomenal player, but I really think he should be around like low 9K just because you're pricing him above 10K and he's going to have those 50 fantasy point games. But it's very rare that Kawhi is giving you those tournament winning, like those big justifying a 5-figure price tag type of games. And I find it tough, especially if Booker's out. If Booker's out, there's no question, because I don't see how Phoenix can even keep this game close for a quarter and a half. I really don't. It's a good Toronto defense, a skilled Toronto offense. This game should just be over by halftime, as it was against a less talented San Antonio team. So we'll have to wait on Booker. But even so, I can't pay that much for – like, I'm not paying more for Leonard than Kevin Durant. Put it that way. That's kind of a simple way to put it, Dan. Not paying more for Leonard than Durant. I'm not. I just think you can do better, and you can. Leonard's a great player, but he's too expensive. Really, I'd rather pay down $2,100 for Jimmy Butler. Tim Hardaway we already talked about. Tobias Harris is actually in a decent spot against Orlando, but that's an awkward price point. I think you can find other better options elsewhere, and we'll get to them. Jabari Parker, 5,800. I mean, it stands to reason that he'll remain in the starting lineup. He had an awful game last time out. I mean, you're running up against Denver, right? You're worried about a blowout. All right, Jabari Parker, especially usage is going to come. That was my biggest issue, was that now you're in the starting lineup. Everyone's excited, but now you got to play all your minutes almost alongside Zach LaVine. Who the hell wants to do that? You look at this game. Let's see. Playing alongside LaVine, Jabari Parker, he had 2 personal fouls in the first quarter, so that makes things a little bit difficult. He played the second quarter without him. Let's look at the second half, because that would make more sense. Jabari Parker, no, it wouldn't, because they gave him more minutes in the second because he didn't get to play as many in the first. But my guess, Dan, is instead of playing about 45% of your minutes without LaVine, you're probably going to play 25% without him, and that's not fun when LaVine's taking as many shots as he is. Now, that said, Parker's coming off a trash game, but he still played 36 minutes in a competitive one, and he's still really cheap. I mean, 5,800 for a pretty decent player. Jabari Parker needs to at least be in the conversation. He doesn't have to be a core play of yours, but at least be in the conversation. Joe Ingles, you have no Mitchell, but that Ingles price point is a little bit intimidating, if you ask me. I'm not paying almost 7K for Jingles. Can't do it. I think he benefits from Mitchell, but he's not. He only benefits if you're getting him the ball. Pass on Joe Ingles. And then, there are a few other guys that we already talked about at shooting guard. I'll certainly make sure to touch on some players in a deep dive. I dig as deep as I can. It has the name for a reason. So does Adam. We don't leave any rock unturned when it comes to researching for that article. So anything that isn't discussed here is on awesemo.com. I can promise you it's worth the read. Oh, and if you want to play Royce O'Neal, that's fine, but I'd rather play someone in Dante Exum that's a couple $100 more and has a 24% usage rate instead of Royce O'Neal, who shoots like, I don't know, how many times is he shooting a game? 2?
Sounds about right.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, he's average. He's played, 6 games. He has 20 shots. Oh, no, wrong. That's wrong. He's played 7 games. He has 24 shots. So, yeah, averaging, 3.5 shots a game? No, thank you.
It's high volume, high usage. Let's talk power forward. I will point out you talked to Wes Matthews at shooting guard, small forward eligible here on DK. Haven't looked at FanDuel, to be quite honest, as of yet. So keep an eye on eligibility over there for some of the guys that Dave has talked about. And if you are looking for a free week of awesemo.com, you can use the promo code EARLYBIRD, one word. If you watch the live shows, there are promo codes across all those shows as well. We have shows throughout the day. You get Josh and either Adam and Lofty for up to 2 hours in the morning, breaking down the slate and strategy going into it, talking individual plays, matchups, the way the slate
is no joke, man. That goes on for a while.
The way the slate breaks down, and then you get from A to B, which is Andrew and Ben in the middle of the day talking golf and NFL and sports at large. And then you have the deep dive with Adam and Lofty for the big slates and the live up to lock with Fast Eddie Fear. And then you get Spags or Josh thrown in the mix as well, holding down the host duties and trying to get a word in edgewise. Let's talk next about power forward as we go through this slate. Every morning here on the Early Bird, Dave and myself, or Adam and EMAC. Power forward has Durant again. So roster construction wise, you have some flexibility here over on DraftKings at Durant sub 10K. Paul George, Harris, same names we've talked about. Aaron Gordon, Draymond Green being quoted that he is in serious pursuit of the Defensive Player of the Year award. I don't know that he wasn't, but good to see him being quoted as such.
Joel Embiid said the same thing in an interview last
week.
It's funny. Yeah.
Good for them. I don't think
didn't say he was in. He didn't say I'm in serious pursuit of the defensive. But he said I'm trying to dominate. I'm trying to be the best player in the game. I'm trying to be the best defender in the game. Obviously he's not the best player in the game, but to have a mindset like that is pretty encouraging.
He's not far off.
No, I mean, he's nasty, dude. He's sick.
He's not the best, but
if Embiid could shoot like 37% from 3, then we'd really be talking about.
We talked about it last pod. If Simmons could shoot at all, if you'd have a team that had very few holes with the rest of that roster.
The difference is Joel Embiid wants to be better at every single. I'm not saying Simmons doesn't, but like.
Well, he dated a Jenner. It's fine.
Right. To straight come out. I know. To just straight come out and be like, yeah, I'm not shooting threes this year. It's kind of, well, why not? Like, why don't you, at least a couple of games?
I'm not an NBA coach, but it seems like giving away the fact that you won't be shooting 3-pointers is a little bit of a disadvantage. I
you think? But, I mean, think about it. You're not going to do any worse than Saric or Fultz have from beyond the arc. Right. Outside of Redick, you don't have good 3-point shooting. So join the group. Who cares?
Right. See what happens. Some might go in.
Exactly. It's very possible. Draymond Green here. You're still getting him at this price point. I'm going to keep playing Dre here. I mean, against Minnesota to a 238.5 total. It's really tough for me to avoid Draymond Green at a position that isn't even deep. I mean, he's 8K on FanDuel, and I would still consider him there. Aaron Gordon is another guy. You're not getting him at, what was he, like 68 or 60?
Yeah, for a while, yeah.
The other day. But this is still not a bad price point on Gordon. He's a tournament play. You're not playing Gordon in cash. He's very much like a 20, 25, or 40 to 50 guy, sometimes better. It's hard to predict the outcome, but I do like this matchup for him. It doesn't scare me. So I think he's in play as well. We talked about Parker just based on price. We talked about Durant. Who else is in here? There are a few other guys that I like. Jaren Jackson, I'll tell you, man, he can't get the foul trouble under control early in his career. He cannot get it under control. And it's to the point where he's played 15 minutes and then 10 minutes over his last 2 games because just the fouls are so such a frequent occurrence. I mean, if I told you, okay, so damn, per 36, he's averaging 7 personal fouls. He's fouling out per 33, basically.
That's amazing.
Per 30, yeah, it's crazy how much he's fouling. It's a liability, but it keeps you off the court. Until that stops, I can't touch him. And it's not like you're going to do it against Utah anyway. But that's just kind of a public service announcement that keep a close eye on that. Hey, I got someone for you though. A little bit of value here. How about Rondae Hollis-Jefferson?
Sure.
He's below 5K. I think RHJ's in a good spot. Houston's not scaring anybody. They're giving up a boatload of scoring per game. RHJ is a player that I like. I think if he stays healthy, he has a chance to have breakout type of season. Very solid defender. Just a couple last year, Kenny Atkinson was really encouraging him to shoot more threes. He shot 4 of them this season, missed all of them, but hopefully that doesn't dissuade him from shooting more. And he can put up some defensive stats. At 4,900, I have no problem whatsoever with Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. And I'm pretty sure I had one more. Let me find it here. Let me find it in my list of power forwards. Dre's obviously one of my favorites, just because that price is hard to get away from. You'll also probably see decent ownership on Harrison Barnes. He's come in. He's playing 34 minutes in 2 games, and he played 28 and 28. I think you're regularly going to see him above 30 minutes. Not a high upside guy whatsoever, but he's cheap enough where you can be all right with it. The problem is last year Barnes was one of like the go-to scoring options. Now you have Doncic, so keep that in mind that he's returned from injury. Barnes is a decent play, but you're really going to want him under 5K. I'd prefer Wesley Matthews, who I know is going to shoot more, even if he's not a big peripheral guy. Because, hell, Harrison Barnes can go a good 20 minutes without a damn rebound, too.
Anything sub 5K here? You have you talked about RHJ, but beyond that with Vonleh, Siakam is down here at 4,800, both coming off pretty big games, 40-plus DraftKings points last time out. Any interest in either of them, or is it RHJ and no one else at that price point?
No, I mean with the way that Siakam's playing, you have to have some interest right now. Here's the thing: OG Anunoby's returning. Now, the question is, because he's missed 3 games. Over those 3 games, Pascal Siakam has put up 24, 44, and 43 fantasy points. So I guess the question here is, do we expect Siakam to keep playing big minutes because of how good he's been, and it directly impacts Anunoby, who comes back and plays like 15 minutes? That's yet to be seen. But this is a damn good matchup. What you could see is Siakam play his normal rotation, or last 3 game normal rotation, like a starter minute rotation in the first half, and then maybe part of the third quarter, play like 7 minutes into the third quarter or so, and then clear the benches, because I just think this game is going to be over. But, seriously, with the way that he has played, I think it might be hard for Nick Nurse to be like, sorry, back to what was he playing before? He certainly wasn't playing 30. Like Anunoby was played 29, 25, and 28 minutes over his last 3 games. In those 3 games, Siakam played 20, 20, and 26. So only one of them was a blowout. It begs the question, like, do you want to run with the hot hand, the guy that's really been playing well and helping you win games? They did lose to Milwaukee, but you get the point. Or do you want to play a guy that just because you'd been playing him earlier in the season? I don't know the answer to that. So for that reason, I think I'll probably limit Siakam to tournaments, but he's still under 5,000. He's still facing a terrible Phoenix team, which definitely puts him at least on the radar for GPPs, because we know that he's got that upside. And hell, Nick Nurse might say, listen, man, when he cools down, we'll put you back into your 25 minutes. But until then, get used to playing 16, 17 minutes per game.
All right. Keep an eye on coach speak for players coming back, obviously, but could get some quality minutes in that matchup. Let's talk centers and close out the podcast here. As a reminder, Dave has the deep dive on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, which is available over at awesemo.com. You need to sign up. Use the promo code EARLYBIRD to do just that for a week, and you get access to everything that is behind the paywall. All the shows are in front of the paywall. They're available on YouTube and Periscope. So you can check those out by going over and subscribing to the Awesemo YouTube channel. 7 or 8K strong in subscribers over there. So don't hesitate to jump on board, enjoy the shows, talk in YouTube chat. But the real action is in the Slack chat, which comes with your subscription to awesemo.com. Some great conversations and some great
trolls
either. It's just me. I'm the only troll over there. So
yeah, it could be worse.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Center is one. Pretty nice to see that it is just centers at the top. We're not dealing with a ton of MP, and just more from a podcast perspective, not from a roster construction perspective. Karl Anthony Towns is 8,900 coming off of back-to-back 64-point DraftKings point outings, 16 rebounds, 28 points, 25 points respectively. 4 blocks 2 games ago, 2 blocks last time out against the Utah Jazz. Vucevic down here at 86. Some decent price points here. DeAndre Jordan coming off another double-double, but what I would gauge as a disappointing outing when it comes to daily fantasy perspective. He gets the New York Knickerbockers here. And then you have Capella, Gasol, Steven Adams, Ayton at 7K flat against Toronto. Enes Kanter is down to 6,400 after seeing his price rise a little bit over the past couple of weeks. Some talented players in pretty good spots. What do you think of the center spot?
Yeah, Capella. I mean, I really like Capella as a player, but I can't pay that much for him. It's really tough. He's been having solid games, right? He's producing well, but I still think Capella belongs in the high 6, low 7K range. I mean, people want to pay this much for him. That's okay. You know, once in a while he'll pay off for you, but I think he can go elsewhere. I think DeAndre Jordan bounces back in a big way. You know, it was interesting that JaVale McGee, by the way, Dan, I was looking up his numbers. Field goal attempts at the rim against him this year, 62. And he has, I believe, yes. So let me just make sure, because this is an insane stat. I mentioned it on the process with Josh. Let me pull up the totals here. Okay, so 52 attempts at the rim this season, 26 blocks, which means he's literally blocked half of the shots against him at the rim this season. That's outrageous. His block rate of anyone playing 20-plus minutes per game leads the league. You know what it is? I'll tell you, 9.2%. 9.2% block rate is insane. It is absolutely through the roof. The reason I bring this up is because DeAndre Jordan had racked up 15 or more rebounds in 5 straight games heading into that. Now, he's still doubled for his 8th or 7th time in 8 games, but he was really, really held in check on the boards. He plays 31 minutes, 12 rebounds. DeAndre Jordan, he should have 18 in that matchup, but JaVale McGee goes out there, plays like 35 minutes and shuts shit down. So I think DeAndre gets back on track here against Enes Kanter and Mitchell Robinson. I can't say I'm worried about either of those two. Really,
come on, Mitchell Robinson is being tutored by Rasheed Wallace. What could go wrong?
Oh, that's good.
Of all the players in the world that I would want tutoring a kid who had clear problems in college.
Rasheed Wallace, exactly.
Rasheed Wallace. But Fizdale loves him and says he's making him more vocal. So there's that. But
yeah, I guess that's cool. Ball
really don't lie. The ball don't lie, yeah, according to Rasheed. So.
And Karl Anthony Towns, last 2 games against the Warriors, 31 points, 16 rebounds, 31 points, 11 rebounds. This feels like one of those matchups where he would struggle, and of course at times he has.
Most centers do, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not looking at the scores of these games, but because look, I tweeted something like it's hard to comprehend how useless Karl Anthony Towns has been this season, and I got a tweet yesterday like, what about now? Listen. I said it's hard to comprehend. What I'm saying is I couldn't imagine that someone that talented could be that bad.
Right.
So when you say, what about now? And I'm not hating, it wasn't even a dude that followed me. This isn't a personal thing, but it's good for reference. What about now? It's like, yeah, thank you. This is what we were expecting. This is what we need and want from Karl Anthony Towns. This is the Karl Anthony Towns that we were accustomed to seeing and rostering. Are we going to get this same Karl Anthony Towns going forward? I don't know. It's really refreshing to see that he's been more impactful. It's refreshing to see that he's actually being more aggressive on the boards, because that was a big thing. You know, prior to these last 2 games, he had single-digit rebounds in one of his first 6, Dan. And how does that happen, right? How does someone that talented, how does that happen? He had under 20 points, 17 or less in all but one of those games. And now he's got 25-plus and 16 rebounds in both. So, I mean, if we're going to get a Karl Anthony Towns that actually is coming to play, you know, that's playing with passion and that's actually being – you know, you look at Joel Embiid. How many of his points are scored just because he wants to score more than the defender wants to stop him? Seriously, like a very simple way to put it. How many of Joel Embiid's points come because he wants to score more than other defenders want to stop him? You could have said the same about guys like Shaq or Dwight in his prime. Like, they just out-muscled you and out-hustled you in terms – or hustle might not be the right word, but you get the point. If Towns is going to do that, which he's done over the last 2 games, he's going to crush, and he's going to be worth way more than 8,900. So yes, Karl Anthony Towns is on my radar. I'm hoping he doesn't let me down. I'm hoping the old Karl Anthony Towns is here to stay, and the one that we had seen earlier this season, he doesn't revert back to that. If you're worried that he does, well, there's still other options. It's not a bad position. Vooch isn't exactly the same kind of player as Embiid, but man, they didn't know how to handle Embiid. It was first Gortat, he played a little bit, and then Boban started the second half. You know, Montrezl Harris wasn't getting any run at the 5 for good reason. They didn't know what to do. You could have similar issues against Vooch. He's not as dominant, but this is kind of one of those spots playing a Clippers team on a back-to-back that could get really interesting. So once again, it's a center position that's got plenty of value. The whole Marc Gasol, Rudy Gobert spot, I don't think I want to go to either of those guys. If I'm going to go to one of them because they're both really solid defenders, I'll go to the guy that's, you know, $1,000 cheaper than the other one, which is Gobert, Gasol, even though Gobert has been far more productive than Gasol this season. You know, it's one of those positions that can be hard to predict, because when you're a center, sometimes you might not have a good matchup, but when you're as talented as Gobert, you can haul in 20 rebounds and negate all of that in a blink of an eye.
All right. Any cheap value here at center or across the board that, as we talk through, at least from a player pool perspective, or guys that you want to find more information out about across all positions, anybody stand out or anybody that you may have forgotten to mention as we got through the podcast?
Well, just the first thing is I'm really interested to see what do we have a minute limit on Dwight Howard yet? Let's see.
I haven't seen one. I saw that he was entering the starting lineup. I know Markieff Morris is back, or not back, but is cleared from any concussion symptoms from last game, so he's available. I have not seen a specific minute limit.
Neither have I. And Scott Brooks has a knack for loving to run his starting centers into the ground, like Gortat. I mean, he would come out Gortat playing 38 minutes a game to start the year.
The first 5 or 6 weeks of the season.
Yeah. And then it's like, all right, he's gone. He's cooked. We'll bench him. We ruined this season. That's good. Okay. But Dwight's 5,200. It's clearly not a good matchup against Oklahoma City, but at 5,200, if Brooks is like, no minutes limit, he's fine. He seems to be I don't see that being the case, but 5,200 is still like really cheap on Dwight Howard. Wendell Carter Jr., we got to talk about him, huh? This guy looked like his first few games were real disappointing. We kept playing him. It started looking a little better. Then he played 18 minutes, and you're like, oh, man, is that because Cristiano Felicio got healthy? Maybe not, because then he played 22, and you're like, oh, maybe it was. Then 27, and then he plays 38 minutes in that I think it was an overtime game against Denver, and puts up 55 fantasy points. Wendell Carter Jr. is going to be a really solid defender. I think he's still very affordable, so that's a good value there. Indiana, a good team, but not a front court that's all that intimidating. Plus, this guy is someone that can pick up defensive stats, which is going to have you like him a little bit more. Another cheap guy that's at least worth giving a look to would be someone like Jared Allen, but his minutes have begun to trend downward, and I'm hoping that's just because of how the game went and not because and Atkinson has some plan here, because Jared Allen's a guy that you're going to want to keep getting minutes on a bad team. Yeah, there's a little bit of value here. Wendell Carter Jr. probably the best, and as much as I don't like the matchup, as much as it concerns me, I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on how many if Dwight Howard's limited, because at 5,200, the guy does not need. Dwight Howard could easily go out there and give you like 10 and 14 with 2 blocks, and at that price, you're pretty happy with it on sites to give you the double bonus as well.
All right. Any final thoughts on this slate before we close it out?
No, just check out the deep dive. I really do just write as comprehensively as I can. I mean, sometimes it can get wordy, but I want to give you all the stats so you can take that into the next slate. So if you're not able to see a show or read an article and you're checking out a slate, what this player does well, what this team does poorly, how this team runs their offense and their rotations. That kind of stuff is important for me to convey to the reader. And the same with Adam when we do the deeper dive at 5 p.m. So for people that really do like the analytical breakdowns and understanding how the games work and why these players are succeeding or struggling, that's the show and that's the article for you. If you're just looking for quick picks and get in, get out, there's plenty of spots for that as well.
Follow me on Twitter. Really. You can, of course, follow Dave on Twitter at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D. Follow me at Dan Strafford, and you get takes on Halloween candy. You follow Osmo at Osmo_com on Twitter. And don't forget the shows throughout the day. So if you go over to YouTube and subscribe, you'll get alerts via YouTube. But there's a show in the morning, typically around 9:15 on the East Coast. So you West Coasters can wake up to us and then to Josh and Adam and or Lofty. And then you get from A to B, and you get deep dive and live up to lock. So lots of content coming out from Osmo. Early Bird is your promo code for a week for free. Promo codes throughout all of those live shows as well to get a sort of different sprinkle of access to Osmo.com. With that said, wish you the best of luck on Friday. You get Emac and Adam on Saturday morning for the podcast, and then Dave and I are back on Monday. Hope you have a great Friday. We'll check you back here on the Early Bird from Osmo.com.